Big NASCAR silly season news as Michael McDowell announces he is leaving Front Row Motorsports at the end of the year and heading to Spire Motorsports to the number 71. What does this shakeup mean? Who takes over the 34? And what in the world is going on in NASCAR silly season?
High, push it, checker flag, hell yeah!
What's the caution for? Me?
Can I not push it in?
Stop anybody.
Come on, he's going! Way to go, boys! One hell of a job, man, one hell of a job. Thank you so much.
I can honestly say I didn't see any of this coming this early. Wow. Oh my gosh. We're going to break it all down. Michael McDowell is on the move. Front Row Motorsports is looking for a new driver. Zane Smith is looking for a ride. Everybody at Stewart-HAAS Racing is freaking out. There is so much to talk about. And before we get on into it, make sure that you mash that subscribe button so that you do not miss an episode. And of course, you can log on to arnrace.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. This is just going to be a straight-up NASCAR silly season episode. We're not going to dive into other forms of motorsports because there is that much to talk about in the world of NASCAR silly season news. So we're just going to jump on into it. The big announcement that kind of dropped this morning was the fact that Michael McDowell announced that he was leaving the number 34 car. He's been in that ride for 7 years now, and he's turning 40 years old this year. He's thinking long term. He's thinking, where do I retire in the next couple of years? And something that I found out this morning that I wasn't aware of, Michael McDowell has never actually had a multi-year contract with anyone in the Cup Series. It's always been year to year. And apparently, Spire Motorsports knocked on his door and offered him a multi-year deal, and Spire and Michael McDowell both announced today that he will be taking over the number 71 in a new multi-year deal starting in 2025. Wow. This just honestly didn't see it coming. I thought Michael McDowell was honestly going to retire over at Front Row Motorsports. That's the kind of feel I got for him. He was very loyal to that organization over the years. And listen, when he got there, they were a mid-pack team. He was kind of, I don't want to say kicked out of Michael Waltrip Racing, but he was left without a home, and he ended up over there when Michael Waltrip Racing folded, and he made himself a nice little home there, and he spent 7 awesome years there where they slowly built that program up. They won a couple of big races. I don't know if you've heard about it, but the Daytona 500 a couple years back, that was kind of a big win for them, and then he wins the Indy Road Course last year, makes the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, and honestly, I thought this guy's going to retire here. He's made a home, he's got a family over there, and this is awesome, good for him. And I see the appeal. I really do see the appeal of him jumping over to the number 71 and Spire Motorsports, not just because they backed a truckload of money up to his place, but listen, Michael McDowell only has probably realistically another 2, 3, 4 years in him, if that. When you hit 40, that's kind of the benchmark in NASCAR these days. And yes, he can be the Mark Martin exception and race into his mid-50s, but that is 1 in a million in the NASCAR garage area. And Mark Martin was that 1 in a million. Michael McDowell, I don't know. I see him racing for another 3 years or so, and he's thinking, I have a family. I want to earn as much money as I can right now in my Cup Series career and hopefully retire on this. And that's his motivation here. And he's also thinking, I want to win. Spire Motorsports, no, they're not the championship contenders that Front Row Motorsports is. They're not the playoff contenders, but they just expanded to a 3-car organization here in 2024, and they are growing. They have a lot of good things going for them right now. I truly believe that, but they just haven't seen the on-track success like Front Row, like other organizations have seen, but they're knocking on that door, and as Corey LaJoie likes to say, they are stacking those pennies, and it could potentially lead somewhere. Now, where does this leave Front Row Motorsports for 2025, particularly filling out that number 34? I've heard a couple of names already thrown out there, and they're gonna change, and negotiations are ongoing, but I heard Ryan Preece is one of the contenders over there to take over that car. It's no surprise Stewart-HAAS Racing is backing down, selling at least 1, if not 2 of their charters at the end of 2024, and honestly, Preece is probably not a bad idea. He does come with his own sponsors. The 34 does have a good amount of backing already. Yes, loves truck stops, will more than likely stay over at Front Row. And I think that does make a whole lot of sense for Ryan Preece. It's a championship contending team, and at the moment, I think it's an upgrade from that 41 car as far as equipment and speed. But at the same time, I've also heard that Cole Custer is in the running for this car. Again, not a bad idea. He does have some backing, but not a whole lot. And I do think that Cole, the fact that he does have a victory already in the NASCAR Cup Series, which is something that most of the drivers in the running for this car can't really say, is something to his benefit. Another name that I heard thrown out for the number 34 was Riley Herbst. He's thinking Cup Series next year. He's got a few more races with Rick Ware in the number 15 this season, and he's still kind of looking at his options. He does have some backing from Monster and some other sponsors, so I do think that that also makes sense. But the other piece of this pie is the fact that Stewart-HAAS Racing and Front Row, there's rumors that they could be merging at the end of this season and become a four-car organization, becoming Stewart-HAAS Front Row Motorsports. I don't know what exactly they would call that and what the ownership structure would look like, but from what I'm hearing, Stewart-HAAS Racing might be 100% for sale at the end of the season. And whether or not Bob Jenkins, everybody at Front Row, pounces on that and makes a decision, who knows? But Front Row does want to expand. We've heard that they've been trying to get back to a three-car organization for a hot minute, and the fact that they're a Ford team means that they can go into the Stewart-HAAS organization and more or less just keep building the cars. Front Row is a Tier 1 supported team from Ford. That is something that is new for this year. It's something that we're just now seeing come into effect, but Ford is struggling, and Stewart-HAAS Racing has kind of backed out of that Tier 1 support from Ford, and they're not happy, and they don't have a contract in place for 2025 and beyond with Ford. So it does kind of make sense that this merger could have some truth to it. It's still a little bit odd, but it's one of those we're going to have to wait and see where the dominoes fall with Stewart-HAAS Racing. They're kind of the big one right now that's going to determine a lot of the NASCAR silly season over the course of the next few weeks. But where exactly does this leave Spire? Listen, this team expanding to a three-car organization this year, great move on their part, because essentially they've had Zane Smith in the car in a not great rookie season, the first third of 2024, but Zane Smith is on loan from Trackhouse Racing. Essentially, Trackhouse is paying Zane Smith's salary for Spire. It's brilliant marketing and brilliant business, because essentially you get a free driver for your car in a let's build it up, let's figure it out kind of year. Clearly that 71 is the third car over at Spire with what we've seen out of the 77 and the 7 this year, and I think that they're definitely going to get an uptick next year. We heard rumors that Spire is looking for a fourth charter. I don't know if that's necessarily a great idea. Get the third car going before you attempt to get a fourth car going. But at the same time, where does this leave everybody over at Spire? I think they're in a really good place. Signing Michael McDowell means you have a veteran coming in that's not going to wreck your race cars, that's going to build on this program. And everything that Michael McDowell is getting from that Tier 1 support over at Ford this year is essentially going to, in some ways, translate over to the notes over at Spire for 2025. But having him locked in over at Spire in a multi-year deal means you get to work on the car. You get to focus on winning races and being fast on race day, and not the behind-the-scenes, find the sponsors, negotiate the contract situation. And this is the first time in Michael McDowell's career that he's not going to have to do that next year. Every year he's been in the Cup Series, he has been in a year-to-year contract, and that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of time, mental energy taken away from your on-track racing. And I do think that Spire is definitely trying to expand. They purchased the Kyle Busch Motorsports assets and building and moved into it, and they're already looking to expand that from what I understand. And listen, they've got a massive, massive, massive partner with Gamebridge, lots of money with that sponsorship, and we've heard the rumors for years that Andretti Autosport is potentially merging with Spire. That's been in the rumor mill for years. I'll see it when I believe it. Andretti to NASCAR is something that I was literally reporting on 15 years ago in this sport, and I don't believe it. I really don't until it actually happens, but it's in the pipeline, and it really wouldn't surprise me if in 5 years or so we're talking about Honda potentially going over to Spire and Spire switching over to Honda. That's definitely a very strong potential because of the IndyCar ties with Andretti, with Gamebridge, and Spire is very clearly a business that they're running pretty decently right now. They've been expanding and building in a very positive direction. Where does this leave Trackhouse and Zane Smith? That's a damn good question, because we've heard rumors that Trackhouse is trying to expand to a third charter, possibly from Stewart-HAAS Racing. Where does this leave SVG? He didn't move to the other side of the planet just to race in the Xfinity Series for another year. So that is kind of a head scratcher. The big thing is, where does this leave Zane Smith? He's clearly a Cup Series driver at this point. Maybe he gets knocked down to Xfinity and we see SVG take over a Cup car next year for Trackhouse. Maybe that's a potential. If I'm looking at these two drivers on paper alone, I got to put SVG in the Cup Series because he definitely draws a lot more sponsor attention. He definitely has a lot more, I would say, talent at this point. Definitely Zane Smith has a lot more potential for years down the road. But at this moment, I'm going with SVG to the Cup Series if I'm over there at Trackhouse and I'm calling that shot. Now, where exactly does Trackhouse put one of these two drivers if they don't get a third charter? Colleague Racing number 16? That's a very strong potential. They could loan Zane Smith out in 2025 to Colleague Racing to take over that 16 full-time. I actually like that a lot better than this kind of rotation of a different driver every week in that 16 right now. It didn't work out a couple of years ago, and I think that there's definitely more potential for Zane Smith to build something over at Colleague in that 16 if he's got nowhere to go over to Trackhouse, and maybe that's where these dominoes fall. Maybe we see Trackhouse pick up a third charter from Stewart-HAAS Racing or someone else, and they expand to a three-core organization with SVG in the Trackhouse stable, and you loan Zane Smith out for another year over to Colleague in the 16. Maybe he finds a home over at Colleague and kind of stays there even though Trackhouse has a partnership and a deal in place. I don't know. This is going to be interesting to see how this silly season shakes out. There is so many things happening right now. There are so many unknown factors. The big one, Stewart-HAAS Racing. As soon as that domino falls and we find out, yes, the 41, yes, the 10 car, yes, the 14, yes, the 4, whichever of those cars are closing down at the end of 2024 will definitely dictate what happens in the NASCAR garage area. But this is already shaping up to be one of the craziest NASCAR silly seasons that we've seen in a few generations. I haven't seen something this crazy since... Not even Kyle Busch leaving Joe Gibbs Racing did this for NASCAR in the Cup Series. This is one of the biggest silly seasons I've seen probably since Dale Jr. honestly left DEI. And that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. So do me a favor, mash that subscribe button so that you do not miss a video. You can also log on to arnrace.com to keep up on this and other NASCAR silly season news. We're going to go ahead and keep up on this, and we'll have a video out in the next couple of days. So for Shifting Gears, I'm Alan Bailey. We'll see you at the track.